Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're good.
I'm just gonna do an introduction first. We're doing our rec meeting quickly first, right? And we're gonna follow with presentation from BNL.
I believe we're opening, moving to new business.
And that's the first order of
That's the
business.
first order. Okay.
And then once it being out, it's done, we'll close that.
Okay, that sounds great. So I'm gonna introduce Kevin Grindle and Nicole Clary. They've been the 2 point folks for the Gate Street Master Plan Committee.
I made more copies, but it's gonna take.
This is a recognition, Mike McGarrio, Linda Bryan, myself, Art Simmons, Brian Callio, Dean Whitwer, and Belinda Reese. We have everybody.
James, give me one.
And James Anderson, who's on the commission, so the Street with us also. So introduction. Give over to Mark.
Sure, I guess officially we'll open at 7:00. And so I guess let's approve September's minutes. And
Hi.
passes and we're down to the business, which is Gate Street.
Okay, so since I'm the chair of the Street Committee, I'll gonna turn it over to Kevin and Nicole. This is the final presentation of the Street Master Plan. I hope everybody. Pretty cool. It's a cool, fun journey.
Nicole, can you screen share?
Yeah, let me give it a try. Oh, it says it's disabled still.
All right, so let me see.
Crazy, real quick. Well, or Kevin.
Can you do it now?
I'm assuming you're aware. So are you guys gonna talk about that?
I can promote how we got there and then segue it.
Sure.
All right. So myself, Kevin Grindle with BNL, with me virtually is Nicole Cleary, a colleague of mine who is awfully convenient to have her remote so she can screen share so I don't have to drag easels and plans around and fumble through hard copies. So I will defer to her in some cases, and I promised her that I would talk until I was tired myself out, and then turn it over to her as well. It's kind of like how we've been going through the Gate Street conversation thus far with the committee. So we've been engaged in this for a little over a year, plus or minus, engaging with the committee on generally a monthly basis. Some months we have skipped in regards to getting some work done behind the scenes, but we've done a complete analysis of the Gate Street property, the positives, the negatives, and everything in between. We walked it, we've seen it in the summer, the winter, the warm weather, the cold weather, and taking kind of a comprehensive analysis of what we saw, and then put it into a document that we feel is comprehensive to the point where it's not going to sit on the shelf. And that was our charge initially. It's something that is kind of a living, breathing document. Obviously, it's a snapshot in time. It's a piece of paper that says, hey, October 2023 on it. But we try to be thoughtful in the parts and the pieces that we see today, kind of actionable things in the short term, the medium term, the long term. And that's what we've been kind of critically focused on through this past year. We've all seen documents, and kind of the master plan component is a frightening term to a lot of people because it really means it's something that's going to collect dust on the shelf, or in this digital age, it's a PDF that nobody's going to open, after we walk out of town. We really tried to kind of reverse engineer this to that not being the case. And, do a little self-promotion in regards to the opportunity we had for the steep grant application that's now been successful. That's where we want this document to come in handy. We want this to be able to, you can flip the page, X, Y, or Z and say, okay, we have a funding opportunity and this is going to slide into that funding opportunity. It's going to prove that we've thought about it. There is pricing to substantiate that thought, and then it can slide in as part of the application package, which we did very successfully on this last steep round. I think that was about a 4-day, runway to get that submitted, and now be it successful. So, initially, And, I can talk as much or as little about, the inner workings of how we got here. And I can also spend some time, when Nicole and I can spend some time reviewing the overall master plan, kind of locations, be it that board that Mark has in front of or behind the committee there. And also something that Nicole can screen share. Each one of the items on that plan is numbered and then codified in our document to say, this is how much it costs in 2023 dollars. And then we put a 25% contingency on that to say, in good faith moving forward, this is something that you can be budgeting for in the 3 to 5 year time period. Generally speaking, if we're talking, pre-pandemic inflation, we're talking, plus or minus 5% a year on construction costs. We're talking a 25% contingency. So we're talking, a 5 year, look ahead to be kind of pragmatic about, everything here is not going to get built in day one. Recognizing that, but we want to again kind of be a productive document in the near term rather than having pricing that we can say, hey, well, it was good back then, but now it's, now you have to start fresh. So initially, the analysis that we performed, both a desktop analysis, kind of the 10,000 foot, Google Earth aerial view zoomed in, that informed the initial conversation. And then we started putting pen to paper. We did a complete field survey of the Gate Street corridor for future sidewalks. And then started to do a visual analysis of what we saw that worked and what we saw that didn't. And through that analysis, we were meeting monthly to kind of prove out those points. Nicole and I have the opportunity to kind of land in here and have a kind of a third party view of things. We're not living this site every day, and we see that as a real opportunity we have, but we also have to vet some of the things we're seeing. We don't want to be accused of outsiders or being outsiders to this process either. So, for instance, we had a long conversation about the baseball, softball diamond out there. Does it stay? Does it go? How do we approach it? What do we do with it? And that's one of those things that we walked in here and saw, man, that's really an underused piece of the overall park. But before we said what to do with it, we wanted to have that conversation out in public with the committee. So you'll see there has been evolution through this, recognizing all those meetings were public meetings, broadcast on YouTube and meeting minutes and so on. So you'll see kind of the evolution of how we got to where we are. And where we are does become an overall master plan. And in that document, we then start landing proposed items on the park. And those proposed items, some of them are just taking existing items and moving them, kind of the functionality of moving things. One of those specific things being the existing playscape. That was a long conversation about what we do with it, how we do with it. And there were items such as the soccer field, such as the large multi-purpose field, is to say, well, it's in a right location, but it definitely needs upgrades. It needs work. So those items there, you're going to see some of those numbers stay the same and some of those numbers move around in the overall plan. And then there's also some totally new elements. Those new elements, be it, a bicycle skills park, be it pickleball courts, be it community gardens, be it dog parks. And that was a result of, throwing things at the wall, seeing what stuck. Some things did, some things didn't. We revisited some things and, let things sit for a month and come back and talk about it. And some of these conversations also, Nicole and I are engaged in this day in and day out. Some of the ideas that we had, they just didn't work, didn't flush out for the community. And, I'm perfectly comfortable in saying that, some of those things are real winners, or we hope that they really are winners once we land them here. But there are other items, we also took a kind of holistic approach at costs. That became that, after we prepared this master plan on a preliminary basis, we started putting costs to it to say, okay, frankly, are we going to get laughed out of town? Recognizing the community volunteer, how we're speaking, actionable things on this Gate Street complex. we don't want to come in here and say, we're going to land, $1 million spaceship here, and it's, it's not the right fit. So we spent a lot of time kind of reverse engineering that too, is to say, we put cost estimates together, and then we looked at them again and put them all together and said, kind of what are the optics? How does this look to the community? How does this look to the commission? And then started saying, let's ratchet this down. Let's bring that up. Let's talk legality. How much does this cost on a need to have versus nice to have basis? And started that dialogue. And that took a couple months. That was the, okay, what does a dog park really need and how much is it going to cost? What about a playscape? And that playscape conversation yielded the conversation about what should the steep grant application be for, how much should it be, and what's kind of the best fit, what's the right number for that. We recognize that a lot of things that go into Park and Rec on the kind of the umbrella of Park and Rec are the nice to haves. They're not replacing the bridge that is failing. They're not replacing or repaving the road that needs repaving. A lot of these things get, frankly, left behind or they're afterthoughts in a lot of kind of the Board of Finance, the critical capital conversations that towns have. So, in order for these to be successful, they wind up being the grant funding. We're seeking funding for X. Very rarely is it kind of the proactive, we're putting money aside for, and I think the playscape here is a great opportunity to highlight that. The playscape would not have been funded. I'll go out on a limb and say it would not have been funded without the last year's worth of conversation that went into this master plan. This master plan now affords the conversation to have been had, and then it's the best fit on the funding. You go, you find the grant application that you believe is going to be successful. You put your energy into that, and now it's yielding success. They're not all going to be successful, and that's the reason that we've looked at this kind of on a 5-year trajectory to say let's cherry pick some things, and there's a funding component in this document too, is to say it's not exhaustive, it's not every we haven't turned over every stone looking for every dollar, but there is that component, is to say here are the kind of the hot grant applications, STEEP being one of them. It's currently an application out for the sidewalks on Gate Street through the connectivity grant program for DOT. Those items are kind of recent successes, but there are others. I will admit we didn't exhaust every Park and Rec umbrella grant application, but there's a good outline here, is to say, okay, where are we going in the near term? What can we look at for 2024, 2025? Recognizing that most of these grants will have a community match, so the town has to be fiscally responsible for match money. So we need to make sure that they work in a long-term process through a Board of Finance and financial conversation. So, and recognizing I am a little bit all over the place here, trying to get a lot of thoughts out at once, and then we can go through some dialogue, some Q&A. Nicole can fill in some of the items that I might be maybe glossing over a little quickly here too. But through the second half, or maybe the last third of this document, we do start outlining each one of the amenities of the elements in the because we also understand that a graphic only goes so far. We need to have some words, some teeth to it, just to say, okay, what are we doing? Here's a pretty picture. That pretty picture you can put on a website, put on a YouTube page, and use as a marketing campaign. But the document itself does also have some teeth as far as why it's needed, how we got here. And then with that, that cost breakdown substantiates. That cost breakdown, admittedly, we did simplify it for the overall document. We have a comprehensive PDF that'll be submitted as well. I'll kind of go hand in hand with this. The detailed breakdown of the square foot cost, the linear foot cost, what the assumptions were, some items, really kind of the backup data, the meat of it that I didn't want to put that, or we didn't want to put that in the bulk of the report. Didn't want to scare somebody with 6-point Excel file that's going to just look onerous to somebody that just wants the bottom line. So what we try to do here is just kind of simplify, or kind of the high level. and costs is to say, hey, you know what, if you're gonna go after the playscape, budget, 420,000 and change as the steep grant was, and the overall project's gonna be just north of 500. But in each one of those is broken down accordingly. And a lot of that was the back and forth with the committee. Is to say, we had a lot of conversation about what to do with the existing garage. We had a lot of conversation of, what do we do with the disc golf? What do we do with the ball fields? Recognizing the soccer field is, underutilized because it's, the turf is in need of maintenance and irrigation is needed. We added that. So all of those items can say, each piece of this, once it's all put together, the goal of this is really an economic and community driver, is to say, those conversations about, the regional connections. How does Gate Street connect into Patchogue? How does Gate Street connect into other amenities being built in Southeast Connecticut? We were talking about the bicycle skills park. There's one that's designed and going to be constructed in Groton. So we're talking Groton, we're talking Southeast Connecticut. We're still talking about kind of how everything links together. Recognizing Patchogue is a big bicycling community or big bicycling outlet, with future mountain biking, ideas for the overall state park or state forest. We thought that was an important piece to prioritize here. The opportunity for enhanced water access to the pond. Talked through that as far as the positives, the negatives. What are we trying to achieve? And the goal there was, we're trying to achieve, an additional level of safety, more visibility down there, more kind of connect that into the park so that you're clearing out, the waterfront, removing some invasive species, really enhancing the waterfront so that it's really part of the park rather than, something that may be, on the side or an afterthought at times. Recognizing a lot of the feedback that we got at the public presentations that we did back in March, the feedback from the neighbors, and that resulted in moving around some of the elements within the overall park too, specifically pickleball, and recognizing that pickleball is, the fastest growing sport that any of us have, that none of us heard about 10 years ago. It's now the fastest growing sport in the country. It's noisy. And that's something that we, kind of responded to the neighbors, is to say, well, let's move it up adjacent to the commercial business, adjacent to 138, so that it's as far away from the residential neighbors as possible. So, recognizing the point to all of this was what works and what doesn't, and shamelessly saying, hey, we don't have all the answers. We can move things around as need be. And I think at the end of the day, it's really a plan that Nicole and I are proud of. And I think, the committee that we've been meeting with for a year now, as well as the overall Park and Rec Commission, could really be proud of this exercise. And this document now is a living document that we can then, go for funding and start to see the improvements in the park. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Nicole, make sure that I didn't miss anything that her and I were talking about. Also give myself a breather here to catch up on myself. So Nicole, what do you got?
I don't think you missed much. I think that was a pretty thorough description. I did have some of the stuff up on the screen for those who can see the screen, kind of flipping through as Kevin was touching on some of these points. I wanted to highlight, he kind of touched on these project sheets. Again, we tried to cater this master plan to something that your community can use to basically drag and drop for grant opportunities. So as you flip through, you can kind of go through and pull out the descriptions that Kevin was talking about, the renderings and kind of the graphics, and then also the costs. So it's fairly easy to go in and kind of pull these out as funding becomes available.
And there's also the component here, between the cost that we have in the document and the overall detailed cost outline. If there's an opportunity to say, hey, we've got a project, but we don't have funding, or we don't have an application that can quite get there. The intention here is to say, well, can we take that overall cost estimate and break it down, or cut it in half, or reduce it, or there's always that opportunity. And I think that's the specific to the sidewalks on Gate Street. Applying for the community connectivity grant program through DOT, that program affords up to an $800,000 request. So what we did was, we took the sidewalks on Gate Street, and then we took a portion of the walking path through the park. We put those together, so we packaged it right up to that $800,000 ask. So that's where we took, you know, parts of here and pieces of there, is to say, rather than, well, we have to begin and end, we could then say, well, we're gonna take, you know, take a piece. So effectively, that application was for sidewalks for the length of Gate Street from 138 up to the existing basketball court. And then the loop, the access walkway that's now shown on the eastern half of the park. So the intent there would be, it would be a loop walking trail that goes up Gate Street and then circumnavigates. It would be by the bicycle skills park and then around the existing soccer field.
It's very important for people to realize that in these opportunities, funding opportunities, to exercise as much capacity as possible due to the money that's available. So it seems a little daunting. But Kevin's talking about the $800,000 limit to the grant that we're trying to get. And you have to get really creative and try and like pull everything in that you can within that $800,000 limit. It's more maximizing your money. Well, that's where the rec commission is going to have to get really creative going forward.
The line item.
With these items, and we, like, when you say you kind of pull from here, you pull from here, dog park, basketball courts, depending on the funding that's available. We're gonna have to get creative with that in that respect, say the money, the grant available, John says, hey, the grant coming up here soon, what do you guys want to do? That's when it's gonna come up to us to say, we'd like to exercise this one, this one, this one. And, or however it works. So keep that in mind, all of us, you know, it's part, it's already, you know.
Yeah, and when the steep grant opened up, we had like a couple of months to put something together to apply for it. And there wasn't really anything else in town that we had like plans or like actual amounts to go by to apply for. Like nothing was really ready yet in that amount of time that we had. But we really just finished this, like, I think
It was
like 2 days
it was
before.
Yeah, it was
Super fast. We got it out. And John, yeah.
And that's it. We presented this in the draft form on Monday night, and the steep application was due on Friday.
Yeah.
So it worked really, really well. And, you know, like to your point, I recognize myself that, you know, the all-in dollar amount is, you know, $4.3 to $5.4 million. That's no laughing matter. I get it. You know, I'm from a small town myself. I know what the, you know, capital line items look like in a town like Allentown. So by all means, Nicole and I are taking these items seriously, and that's to say that creative approach is sometimes, you know, looking at a park and rec budget, man, this year's going to be a couple picnic tables and replace a few benches. You know, and that's the nature of it. Yeah, you know, I get that. Where, you know, I live in Hampton. A few years ago, we were able to get a pavilion built on the you know, town hall complex through, you know, local endeavors from a local church, and, you know, some good faith efforts for, you know, the town purchased the building, and, you know, volunteers erected it, and it's now a great amenity. But that was not done in a conventional, you know, design bid, you know, environment, because we couldn't get there. And so I guess the point to all that is I recognize how daunting some of these numbers look in the scheme of things. And we get that. So
it seems to me like, and I don't know how everybody else can, but seeing this master plan makes everything seem more approachable, and we can you know, thinking today, this could be one of the biggest projects this town has ever seen, if not the biggest. So it's all here. It's in paper. It's definitely a thing. It really is.
Yeah, like you guys have already said many times, even though this is, you know, approximately $5 million, you guys, again, kudos to you guys, broke it down piece by piece. And when you think about, you know, the steep grant is usually an annual grant. With the max of 500,000 state and the town can contribute as much as they want. That makes it much more palatable and, achievable because, that's not that we want to drag this on for 10 years, but essentially that's 10 steep grant rounds and there you go. Now we have,
left.
right, now we have every single item that's on this document. And that's just one grant. That's, not including the connectivity grant. That's not including the community investment fund, which is a significantly larger grant that, we could go for millions of dollars, but also tie that in bigger town projects. So I guess I'll just say I'm extremely excited about this. I think you guys did a great job. As a resident, I'm proud to have this opportunity. I truly think, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the recreation director in Plainfield. I've been in the recreation field for 10 years and I love it. This is, if we achieve this, 75%, 90%, whatever, it's still going to be one of the best facilities, in Eastern Connecticut. So I think it's incredibly exciting, especially for a small town, Voluntown, to have this opportunity. You talked a lot about fitting into the fabric of the community. I think this does very well. I like the emphasis on, the walking trails, the dog parks, the vegetable garden. It's not just your standard soccer field or baseball, whatever. There's something for everyone. So it really is. Yeah. So good job.
Appreciate that. I will say, obviously, going on here, this is kind of at the final, this is the conclusion of our efforts, but recognizing if there's any comment, any feedback, we're very happy to receive that and say, is there something, are there minor tweaks that can be made to satisfy this group? That can be incorporated, moving forward. This isn't a,
So based on funding and your estimate of probable costs, your costs were based on standards. And as you said earlier, they do increase with inflation. They don't increase it as dramatically as you might think they do. They don't go up a few percent or 5% per annually. So these numbers that you're looking at are more realistic in the short term, in the 5-year plan. So that's important to recognize. So we're not going to see this dog park jump up 25 or 30% in the next 5 years. It's going to be a reasonable cost that and it's attainable through some grant situations. So that's another important thing that people just need to realize. Like, it doesn't go up like the price of gas does. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And it's all information that's public. It's public information. I can show you the websites to look at. Very easy to find. So when we start building these ideas and this creative watching things together and pulling from here, we could figure those costs out ourselves very, very easily. So we're not so blindsided by engineering and they don't resign. It's not that scary. You're not, you see it every day. We're all leaning
Chocolate at the bit.
I know, right?
I think it's, the Gate Street or the steep grant is an example of how this essentially has already paid for itself. Like you guys said, we wouldn't have gotten that without this document. And it's exciting that, in theory, we can see tangible things outside next 6 to 12 months.
We got a grant before you even gave us your final presentation.
I was gonna say, it's a win. I'm going out here patting myself on the back. But I told you it was gonna happen a year ago. Actually came, actually happened.
Yeah.
So that's everything that Nicole has. Really, tonight's point was to kind of roll this out to say, this is the culmination of what we've been working really hard on. So kudos to everybody in this room, recognizing what it takes to be a volunteer in a small town. volunteer versus voluntold to kind of help out. I get it. So everybody in this room, hats off to you. Both Nicole and I understand what it takes to be here on a monthly basis. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
This next grant application.
Well, we have a couple of years to spend this one, so
All right.
we're gonna start planning the playground.
Everyone knows, because before B and L actually leaves the picture. Okay, some information we may need going forward as far as, okay, we have a steep grant. How do we move forward with that? Money's available, now it goes to design.
Yep.
So design being designed, and now we need to procure a design.
Correct.
There's bidding process or just selective process, then there's the bidding for construction. After the design is 100% complete, or it's 95% or whatever it might be. Can you explain a little more how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. To this point, once the contracts are, codified and money's are confirmed, the intent would be the town would put that design project out to bid. A very similar process that you inherit on to hire us to do this project. I will say that I will be first in line for that design. I'll give a shameless plug. That's all I would like to still be here with you moving this one forward. But through that process, it would be an RFP process, a request for proposals process. Firms would be evaluated based upon their qualifications, and then that design process would begin. I would anticipate in this timing. The steep grants are fairly efficient to get money rolled out, so that
We have to do a CHRO meeting. They're making everyone do.
I'm
So
taking training.
they're making us all do a training, and I think they changed the date on it. Is it supposed to be yesterday?
No, I don't
Uh,
know.
yeah, next Wednesday is what I have now. It's like the 12th. Is that it?
11.
What? I don't know. Some meeting got moved. I don't know which one. I said it was a steep one.
So from that point, once the bid process is underway, a contractor or a design firm would be selected. The way that we would approach this, once hired, it would be design process that would be kind of a preliminary design, conceptual design, preliminary design, final design. Effectively 30% complete, 60% complete, 90% complete. And then what we would be working towards is to assemble a bid package with documents for design and documents for construction. So once that design was complete, once the final design was complete, the bid package would be assembled, and that would be pushed out for contractors to bid on. At that point, those contractors would competitively bid on the job, and then yourselves, along with the design firm that designed the project, would evaluate those contractors again based upon price and qualification, and then hire a contractor on board to build the job. So,
Based on a whole gamut of qualifications.
based on a whole gamut of qualifications.
Which, that's what you guys,
That's it. So,
we don't have to be 100% knowledgeable. That's why we hire in that 15% contingency for them to take care of.
yeah, so recognizing that Nicole and I are engaged in this, on a daily basis, those contractors would be familiar to us most of the time. And the ones that would not, recognizing they'd all be evaluated based upon their qualifications, their pricing, their qualifications, building similar projects, how that all comes to be. Recognizing that a lot of it is, during the construction season, construction cycles, kind of the ebb and flow of who's interested. What we be doing on your behalf is kind of engineering that system to make sure we're putting it on the street when it's going to be the most competitive. Really beating the bushes to make sure the contractors are aware of this. If you would ask me that 5 years ago, I would have said we would have put it out on the street and then waited for 5, 8, 10 contractors to show up bidding. Now in this construction environment, we're out there soliciting bids, making sure contractors know it's on the street, asking them if they're going to bid, making sure they're pre-bid. You know, right now, if we're seeing 2 or 3 contractors show up, that's a good turnout for a lot of projects. We've had projects that go out that are very competitive that no bidders show up on. It's just the nature of the construction industry right now. So that would be our charge as well, is to make sure you're getting the cream of the crop, if you will, to make sure that contractors who can build this are, you know, they know it's out there and they know, you know, they know it's gonna be a good job for them. So, making sure you get contractors at the table bidding competitively, that assures you the best pricing. And then what we'd be doing is also making sure that through the construction process, you know, construction administration, construction inspection, making sure that the project gets built the way we designed it and the way our technical specifications say it needs to be managed and adhered to. So all of that would be under the auspice of the design firm that you'd be hiring on. Once again, I'll be first in that line asking for that work. So this is something that, well, Nicole and I spend a lot of time in master plan world. It's always nice to see things get built. So that's, we both have little kids ourselves. The idea of seeing kids playing on a playscape is effectively why we do what we do most days. So with that, that's, you know, like to that point, that's kind of how you get to the finish line on a job like this.
Where you want to be.
That's right. That's right.
You don't want to end up on the finish line with something that you don't want, or
Nope.
regret hiring someone, or
Exactly.
Can I kind of hook onto that a little bit more? So right now, we're in the process. You know, we just got this grant, but this grant's, it's available. So we're in the stage of right now acquiring design. It's a good time of year for design because we get this design pushed through by the month of January, February. It can go out to bid for construction following, which means there could be construction happening next spring.
Yes. Yeah, this timing is
Happening
perfect.
as soon as spring. This is perfect timing right now. Yeah. But we don't sit on this for a year.
no,
The budget doesn't really change that much. The funds that we have available will not be affected by the proposals that they gave us per this individual playscape modification or construction. Right now is like the best time to grab a design firm, get them working on it. So it goes out to bid January, February. So there's a team already ready to break ground. People.
Yeah, the ideal is contractors are, you know, looking for 2024 construction starts now. You know, they're calling us asking if we've got anything in the pipeline for 2024. The idea is to get them interested over the winter so that they're competitively bidding for spring 2024 starts. So that the pricing is in place, the materials can be sourced over winter, early spring. They can get crews, you know, involved and engaged so that, you know, come a spring start, they're ready to move. If that does slide, the other opportunity is a summer start and then a fall growing season, so that you're completing it in fall, so that you're growing grass in September and October rather than trying to force grass in July and August. So there are kind of two components here. Ideally, it's a spring start because everybody's hungry for work, but second best would be a summer start so that you're completing in fall. That's kind of the second best opportunity. So you got two opportunities. Both of them have upsides. So really, it's the ideal time frame.
We're not dismantling this Gate Street community, probably because we were selected B&L. Move forward with the selection of design that's going to be moving forward. So you're not saying,
Yep.
That's next on the agenda. So I actually feel it before we leave here. Probably should have other meetings for Gate Street master plan. Selection of after we
I have to, it's probably gonna take a while before we're ready because we can't do anything until the contract's done and sometimes that can take a while.
okay.
So I'll let you know
Okay.
when we can do that.
Oh,
But yeah, I think
that's-
keeping the committee, the same committee would be good. So
There's probably some preliminary work, but yeah, like we can't,
We can't go out to bid or anything.
Right,
We can't sign any contracts, we can't.
understood, no, I
exchange
understand,
any money.
there's a process. I
Yeah.
understand.
But there's definitely some. You know, like reaching out to playground manufacturers,
Mhm.
you know, starting that conversation, looking at what we're interested in. 'Cause each manufacturer kind of has a different itch, I guess.
That's right.
So, you know, figuring out, okay, it's pretty amazing, you know, what kind of playgrounds you can get these days. So those conversations can.
Yeah, because we're not gonna have enough money to do everything in the plan for the playground, so we're gonna have to pick what we want to do. So, and what kind of, like, we want to do the big expensive, like foam ground or not.
Yeah, that's
So,
Yeah, some work at it.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's fun.
Yeah.
stuff.
We get to test out playgrounds all over the place. I actually had a recommendation from a resident to check out the playground in Hope Valley, behind the post office. So if anyone gets a chance to go look at that one, take pictures and report back. That's your.
When does the town get it on their transportation?
Oh, you know what? You know what? I did just get an email like a couple of months ago that we're supposed to get it by April of 2024.
That's right.
So we'll see.
I think I'm all set with questions.
So if you all set with us, and I can make my way out so you can take care of the rest of your meeting. Nicole can log off, but obviously, you know, Mike, Tracy, you know where to find us.
Yep.
Any questions that come from this meeting or following up, don't hesitate to reach out. So really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
for your effort.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, everyone.
Really great.
Yeah, have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you for the best.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for volunteering.
For worrying.
Yeah. Hold on, just a minute.
Put out on the website, I think, meeting up
Yeah.
there, so
All right.
people want to get her name.
Shannon.
Hold on. It's like, yeah, it's
And meeting.
like, all right, there we go. No, I'm clicking the end meeting.